Hello and welcome to Creativity Rules. How are you? I see you cleaned up pretty nice for our show.
Namaste. Good day for everyone who's watching this. And yes, it's been a journey of sorts the entire last 8-9 months for many of us. So it took many forms and shapes for many people, including I. So I experimented with a long flowing beard, which grew into something much more serious than I had thought it would be. I had to move on from that stage and go
Yeah.
back to my original looks.
So, Punit, thank you for agreeing to appear on Creativity Rules. Like I was speaking to you before, the intent of this podcast slash show is to get people a glimpse of how they can go on a quest of discovering their own creativity. Because a lot of people have this perception that the kind of profession I'm in, I don't need to be creative, or I am not creative because I'm not good at arts, or the actors and singers of the world need to be creative. So the platform has been created for people to really understand what is the meaning of creativity and how through little practices and small practices on daily basis they can build on and augment the skill. So that's where I thought I should get these interesting multifaceted people who have led multiple careers across different geographies and are doing a lot of things together. So I understand, Puneet, that you've been a marketer, you've been in sales and marketing of big global companies like Microsoft, NIIT, to name a few. And then you started this venture called Octane.in, which is like a marketing tech kind of a setup. And now you're doing something known as MBA Sparks. So I see a lot of creative sparks in you. So that's where I thought you should appear on this show. So what are your thoughts, Puneet, on creativity?
Thank you very much for starting this series, by the way. Creativity is something which is, as you rightly said, often overlooked. But let me answer your question on three levels. One is creativity is not something new. It's not a management buzzword for today. It's
Yes.
coming into prominence because of a simple reason that a lot of our jobs are getting automated by technology, AI,
Yeah.
machine learning.
Yeah.
The few aspects of a human being, including creativity, is something you cannot copy. Computers are not there as yet. And that's why we still have the A in the AI, artificial. The day it becomes as good as human beings in terms of compassion, those human emotions, creativity, problem solving, they'll just become intelligent, not artificially intelligent.
Yeah.
So creativity is nothing new. Creativity has been there for ages. If you see how, as our ancient tradition, kalpana is the word for creativity in Hindi. So
Yes.
a human being has been creative from, millions of years. We started from Stone Age and we've moved on. So, the discovery of the wheel. So it's nothing new. It's just that the rate of change today is perhaps unprecedented.
Yeah.
In my life, for example, I grew from record players, LPs, vinyls, to tape, cassette
Hmm.
tape, to CD,
Hmm.
to now MP3, and to AirPods and iPods. So that journey was once every 10 years. We would move from one medium to the other medium, 10 to
Yeah.
15 years. Right? Now the journey has become much more shortened. So the life cycle of ideas, products, companies is becoming shorter. So why are we talking about creativity today, which is part number two, which is what I want to share with you, is because of the digital disruption.
Yeah.
Data, devices, digital, every 24 hours, more video is uploaded on YouTube than the entire video archive of human beings for the last so many years. Can you imagine the magnitude of, you can call it bad creativity, good creativity, but we've become massive producers of content and ideas, which is unprecedented. You can have a new idea somewhere in different part of the world.
Yeah.
And because we are all connected, because we have the digital data devices coming together, creating a perfect storm, there
Yeah.
is a shorter shelf life for idea. It can be copied very fast. You have to go to market very fast. So that's the part which has changed the equation completely. You can sit at your home and connect with so many of us. This is also creativity. So the notion of creativity we have in management jargon is very different from creativity in the real world. People think of ponytails as creativity, artists as creativity, people who paint with a brush as creativity.
Yes.
Programmers are creativity. The Zoom interface is creative. The way this light is, and this integration of entire video. So for me, the third part, which is all of us are creative. All of us have multiple facets. Human beings have this tendency of getting bored with the routine. If you do the same thing again and again and again and again, there'll be a point where you'll get bored. Everybody does. Even a player playing cricket and batsman, he gets bored. So he'll innovate newer strokes, newer shots, newer ways of doing things. So all of us, when we get bored, we want to find something newer and exciting for a reason. So the third part is that all of us have creative instincts. All of us are creative. Every child is creative. Somewhere we get conditioned that what is creative and what is not creative, and why should you, we lose the courage, we lose our innocence to be creative. So creativity is around us. All of us are creative. So what you can do perhaps as a professional is rekindle that part of you. That's the only part, and there are techniques and tricks. We'll talk about some of my tips. But those are three elements. Creativity is nothing new. It is an intrinsic part of the human existence, a human experience.
Uh, Puneet, growing up and as when you made a transition into the corporate world, what kind of perceptions you had about your own creativity? Because I understand that you studied in Ranchi, and for your professional work, it took you to San Francisco, Amsterdam, London, to all these different cities. So, how was that experience for you?
Oh, being a small town, I was a guy, I was overawed by what was happening in the big cities. I would travel to Delhi every summer.
Hmm.
Our family would do a reverse commute. Most people go from Delhi to hilly areas. And my family, my mom's side being from Delhi, we would do the
Yeah,
transition from a cooler climate of Ranchi to a hot city like Delhi can be in the summertime.
yeah,
But whenever I would come to Delhi, it was like, what's happening here? My eyes would pop up, right? So I always thought I'm not there. I will not be able to be in that same league. I thought there's some other people who are born with that talent, background. They have to speak good English, for example. I had all those misconceptions. Luckily, I started working when I was very young. I got lucky because I got social promotion twice in my education. So I
yeah.
graduated when I was 19 and a half with my first degree. So I started very early, and I didn't have many options to choose from. So I said, whatever comes my way for lack of choice, I'll make the most of it. So, but slowly and steadily, I worked with very smart people around me, and I started learning from them. So copy paste does work if you are starting out. And that's the initial part where I started seeing people smarter than me. I would be the quietest guy in the meeting at NIT, one of the early companies where I worked. And I
Yeah.
was working with top graduates from B schools and IITs, and I would see how they behave, how they work, what do they read, who do they hang out with. And as somebody said, you're a sum total of the company around you. And I think that was very useful for me in my journey of becoming somebody who's more aware about my potential.
Puneet, you said a very interesting thing. You said copy paste works in the beginning. And I think a lot of people take this pressure, oh, if I have to be creative, I have to be very, very original. It needs to be completely clutter breaking. And that fear itself paralyzes them to kickstart something new. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a scrapbook digitally also in my physical
Yeah,
space. And whatever good I like, a nice visual, nice video, nice photograph, nice quote, I'll just snap it, scrap it, and keep it in my book. Not because I want to copy the same style, but when you are archiving it, when you're bookmarking it, one, you can always revisit it.
yeah,
And secondly, what happens is it triggers maybe at a subconscious level. Who am I to discuss subconsciousness? I'm not a yogi, but it does help me get ready for it. So for
yeah,
example, I may be going into a new area where I have to work with people to create something brand new from scratch,
mm,
piece of content, collateral. But if I've seen something before which I've liked, and if I bring it to the table, I can get better responses from people around me. So those are things which are very useful. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but copy paste does work because it's inspiration essentially, and
yeah,
inspiration can come from anywhere. As long as, listen, if you're copying blatantly and putting out as your work, that's not done. But if you're copying somebody's art and giving them the credit and asking for their permission, there's nothing wrong with it. For
Hmm.
example, about 10 years back, a photographer friend of mine took the old Raja Ravi Verma paintings from Kerala down south, beautiful paintings, and he recreated them with newer models. So, that came out stunningly beautiful. So that's okay. You can, as long as you don't, if you've taken inspiration from many, many sources and now you can't see the original source of that inspiration, then it's your own creation. But there's a myth that, oh, whatever I've created is my own. I mean, you are part of a community. Your experiences are shaped by your community around you.
Yeah.
So I believe at some level, I'm a big proponent of societal knowledge, common knowledge. I tend to differ from patents and copyrights, but hey, that's my personal opinion.
All right. So Puneet, tell us about your own journey of working in these global organizations to starting something of your own, and then having this endeavor called MBA Sparks. What sparked your interest in all these different endeavors and initiatives that you led?
So initially, and it changes. The drive, the objective changes from time to time. When you're
Hmm.
starting out as a 19-year-old young boy who just wants to leave the small city, which was not very safe, not very conducive to business, no jobs. So either I could have become a thug on the street or I could have left the city. So perhaps I'm still a thug, but a different one. So when I moved when I wanted to go to a big city, whatever came my way, I wanted to make the most of it. And the basic necessities that I don't have to look to my parents for supporting me. Can
Hmm.
I make some money? And then slowly it became into something more responsible. Can I save some money? Can I do something for my family? So there is a great tradition that we come from where, kids are supposed to do well, get, their feet up and then get onto the feet and then do something for the family around them. But then, you get bored because job to job to job, it's just, you leave one job and the other company wants to hire you just because what you've done in the last job and pay you more money, 30% more money. And that to me was never a driver. I get bored even now if I do something, same thing for more than 2 years or 3 years. So for me, the trigger of finding something new where I do not know anything, I go to cities where I don't know anybody. I've taken assignments where I have no clue. That fear of the unknown went away at 19 or maybe 20. So that's the starting point. But my journey changes from stage A, which is get some financial success, roji roti, kapda makan, and then can I do check boxes? And a lot of our uh, what we call as definition of success is defined by external factors.
Yeah.
किस तरह का जॉब होगा, किस कंपनी में होगा, कहाँ से MBA करेगा, who are you dating, which parties are you seen in, what clothes you wear. Even this, for example, is a definition of success defined by somebody else. I would rather be, not wearing this or wearing this, doesn't matter, but there's a certain way, there's a certain look. So we are defined, the success parameters are defined by things around you. So second stage was that part, that checkbox. Worked for large companies, worked for Silicon Valley. So in 1999, I made my own business plan in a way. I used to work for a company called NIIT, and they used to have this 3-year perspective plan for corporates. That
Hmm.
every team would discuss where they would like to see, all constraints removed, what is their blue sky thinking for next 3 years. तो
Hmm.
मैंने कहा जब ये कंपनी करती है अपने लिए, why can't I do it for myself? So in 96, I wrote a plan for myself saying where I would like to see in the next 3 years. So one of them, I used the same techniques I was learning in my corporate job on my own. And I said, I want to be a world-class sales and marketing consultant by 1999. And then this is very different era. I'm talking about 96. And I said, let's give it a shot, right? क्या होगा? नहीं होगा, नौकरी तो है ही है. So
Hmm.
I learned new languages like Spanish because Spanish is spoken in most parts of the world. So I did all of that. And I said, how would I know if you've reached that place? Then I said, you will be working in a global geography. So, mind programming is a fabulous area for folks who want to really go farther in their careers. So it did happen that by 97, I was in the US in Silicon Valley. So a lot of the success parameters which we define are defined by those check boxes: work for large company, blah, 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 drove a Mustang convertible, and then it comes to, okay, let me digress a little. There's no one Ridhima Wali on this conversation right now. There's no one Punit Modhgil. There is two of us and there's two of you on the other side of the camera. There's the inner consciousness, there's the inner voice, there's the inner person. You can't lie to that person. And that person will tell you whether you're on the right track, wrong track, whether what you did in the morning today was right or wrong. That's a man in the mirror, proverbial, right? So that one will catch up with you very soon. So it has been part of that journey, that what do I want to do next? And so from fame, recognition to creating impact, but that problem solving kida never goes away. So on one hand, you have, for example, coming to my recent journey, I was on a sabbatical, sold my last company sabbatical from February 2019 till August 2020. And then I said, there's so much of disruption around me. Everybody's gone on to video. People are working from home. Is there an opportunity? And even yesterday, I was talking about this at a startup conference. The disruptions are the best places to start new ideas and experiment with new ideas. So I said, if MBAs are not happy because they're not getting the right jobs, and corporates are not happy because they're not getting the right MBA, is there a way I can solve that problem? So that is my interesting journey. It's still unfolding, and it's a group called MBA Spark. So mbaspark.com. So that's the way it comes together. So first step of any creative process is your disenchantment with what you see around you. You're not happy. You're like, kuch alag hona chahiye. And by the way, creativity is not just the corporate world. Creativity is around us. The entire political dialogue in India, for example, even now, is about creative ideas. So creativity starts with disenchantment. You're not happy. You've done the same thing again and again and again. And like this, there must be a better way. So is there a better way is the second stage. And the third stage is, let me try something, trial and error. And all of us get ideas. Very few of us have the courage and the awareness to take them to market.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you left your last gig and you said, I'll start Nyra Consulting, Nyra Leadership. So there is a reason why you did this. And the reason could be forced upon you from outside, or it could be your own calling. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. The fact is there's a disenchantment with the situation you're in. And that is the creation, that is part one of the creative process. Where we all fail is we don't encourage that part. So for example, the last story, Suhas Datta and I at NIIT, way back in 1996, we were one of the first 15, 20 people on the internet from India. We created India's first travel portal called delegate.com. But our middle class lifestyles and backgrounds took better, control of it. We never grew it. We were very successful. We were listed by Lonely Planet as one of the only resources from India. I'm talking about the time when there was no hindustantimes.com. There was no timesofindia.com. Yeah. We used to scan the news elements of newspapers and put it up online. But we never pursued that idea. We pursued to a point where we could see early success, but then our middle class backgrounds took control. Suhas moved to a NIIT project in Singapore. I moved to Silicon Valley. So, but when we saw what happened with the travel space in India, with Make My Trip, etc., then that was my validation, saying if I had stayed that course, perhaps, big perhaps, would have been my story. So by not pursuing ideas and somebody else, how many times have you met people who have said, oh, I had an idea like that?
Yes, a lot of times.
But उसके बाद वो awareness नहीं करी, उसको courage नहीं लिया कि आगे बढ़ते हैं. So that's the trial and error part. And once you land an idea, once you deliver something, even if it fails or becomes better, there's a satisfaction you have. कि मैंने किया. That you can't find in a job, but a regular job. A lot of jobs these days also give you that space to be creative.
So only 3 to 4 things which resonated with me in this conversation is that your early experiences made you completely fearless of the unknown. In fact, you started enjoying it after a point. And you said you need to rekindle that courage within you to pursue those ideas. And a lot of people don't rekindle it, and that's where it stops. And a basic thing you said that for any creativity, you need to have a knack of problem solving. So I'm assuming problem solving is an essential lever of creativity. And you said that creativity starts with a basic disenchantment. So these are some of the levers of creativity. My question to you, Punit, is a lot of things back then in 95, 96 were happening partly design mode, partly default mode. You didn't know what your creativity was, where you would like to be creative. At this juncture of your life and your career, what are the things that you do very consciously to keep that creative spark alive within you? Because now I know you have, I would like to guess that you have reasonably figured out that what is your spark of creativity?
I think I give more time to myself.
Hmm.
And I'm getting away from a lot of clutter. Like I'll give an example. I used to be very social. I used to be with anybody and everybody. And I used to hate it when I would be on my own. I had to be with friends every evening.
Hmm.
So from that moment, I've realized that unless you give your mind and yourself some time to yourself,
Hmm.
a lot of your thought inside of you will not solidify into something or fructify into something more meaningful. So that's the one part. It's partly age and partly also my own awareness that
Hmm.
I do give a lot of time to my own self. I've also learned my own personal creative process on how I work better, how do I discuss or discard ideas. One discipline that's really helped me from, I would say, 99 onwards is what you see behind me. I'm a voracious reader. I read average a book a week. Every book is an idea, bad idea, good idea, badly written idea, good, very, 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 very well written idea.
Ah.
So the moment you read a book, it makes you explore areas which are something you never thought about, and mostly nonfiction. So that's been my way of getting new ideas. I am part of many pro bono conversations where a startup will come to me for asking for my time. So earlier I would say, what's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
मैं अपना समय दे रहा हूँ, तुम्हारा marketing plan बता रहा हूँ तुम्हें क्या करना चाहिए. What I realized is, even if I speak to them, I discover something new about their business, about their problem solving techniques.
Hmm.
So being open, being courageous, and I think being able to receiving is a lot more, are three big areas where I've made a lot of changes in my life. And I'm not interested anymore in just being with friends or with family just because it is the norm. So yeah.
Uh, Puneet, you said a very interesting thing. You said that you spend a lot of time with startups pro bono.
Yes.
But is it because the kind of juncture of life and career you are in, you can afford that kind of time? Because I see a lot of young folks, entrepreneurs, shying away from anything which is pro bono because they're like, what's in it for me in this? How is this discussion leading to any profit? Why are we spending so much time on that customer? Why are we giving that post service to customer? It's taking a lot of our time. There's no profit. So, what's your viewpoint on that? Because I don't know, somewhere I feel it very disenchanting, but then I feel no, he's making sense. That time is money. So, how does one balance that? Seeing people as dollar heads.
There is again, I'll discuss this at a slightly higher level, then I'll land up at
Please.
the specific point you raised. We start by being part of a family unit where we're dependent on each other, and there's a yearning to be independent home, house, car, bungalow, whatever, right?
Hmm.
And then you realize we're all interdependent. So that is part of the journey. You go through that experience when you have had this beautiful house by yourself, beautiful home theater system by yourself, but nobody to enjoy with. Then you say, like, what's missing now? I have everything which I wanted to have. So, a rickety Maruti 800 is much more fun with five more friends or family than a Mustang convertible open cruising at 100 miles an hour on the coastal region of California, but you're just being yourself. Different experience, but you do miss the social element. So interdependence is one part, which is true nature. Humans are interdependent on each other. The second is that I was like most of us, which is very selfish, motive driven, short term selfish. I'm
Hmm.
still very selfish. When I'm doing pro bono, I'm still being selfish, just that I'm not being short term selfish. I still see them as dollar heads, but
Dollar head.
not that the check I can encash tomorrow. So that
Very
social
good point.
network, that is the true social network. What you think of networking is a wrong word. We are building relationships as we go along, different types, different strengths. So that is my joy. So when I'll give an example. So a friend of mine wrote to me saying, this is young MBA. She wants to come to you and get some guidance about marketing. I said, sure, happy to have a cup of coffee. I cannot give anybody a job or assurance for a job, but I'm happy to meet. She came to my office and typical 22-year-old, very confused, had a lot of questions which she didn't know where to ask. So I did my own bit, and she went back very happy. And um, then that's where things were. So about a year later, she called me and I said, I'm a little bit busy. So she said, I'll call later. So she called up later, and then we were discussing, and she says, what's happening? I said, I'm just in a tough spot with my company, and I have, fundraising issues right now. I have working capital issues, which is cyclical, right? All businesses go through that. You have receivables and you have payables, and so always there's a challenge, especially if you're bootstrapping your own business. So I said, I think I need to go to a bank to um, raise some money, and they're asking for 18%, and I have to give my home for collateral, which I'm not comfortable with. So she says, uh, are you okay if I was to let my dad speak to you? I said, okay.
Okay.
You know who her dad was, which I never asked. I never asked that question when I met her. CMD of a bank.
Oh, cool
So
stuff.
it does come back to you. Ridhima, anything you do will come back to you. You talk about karma, you talk about whatever you want to call it. It does come back to you. It comes back to me in truckloads. So would you rather like to have 10 rupees for the hour you spent, or would you like to have 1,000 rupees, which keeps on paying every time you look for help? So help will not come back to me from the same person. It may not, the person may not even respond to your phone call 4 months later, but that's okay. When you call on strangers, when you call on people you don't know, it'll come back to you. So being long-term selfish is what helps me. So
So
I
does
also have those
selfish
challenges that
mean that you don't, there is not this conversation going at one part of your head, okay, when will this come back to me? What will I get out of it? Or it's completely with a neutral stance.
that doesn't come back to me. I mean, that thought doesn't exist anymore.
It
That
doesn't
whether it'll come back to me. It will come back to me.
exist. Okay.
I have been in my life 3 times at a point where I felt I should just harm myself. 3 times. And all 3 times doors have opened for me. Doors have also closed for me, which led me to that point. But there's a beautiful cycle. It's a question of, are you ready to bounce back? So
Yeah.
I feel it's my bank account, my relationship bank account. I keep on doing stuff and it comes back to me. So it comes back to me in truckloads. The MBA I helped has now become a director in an association, industry association.
Yeah.
Anytime he's thinking about a new conference, he says, "मुझे तो आपको ही नाम पहले आता है, आपको बुलाता हूँ."
Ji.
Right? So I think there is a false notion that, of course, I can say this because I'm at a stage where I am, but I think short-term selfish is not the way. Business card usko do jisse aapko turant order mil jaye. And I've seen this when I used to go to a party and I would say, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I run marketing for Microsoft." Everybody would love to hang around with me, get my business card, and next day morning proposals will start happening. "Oh, we have this sports conference coming up, would you like to sponsor?" Then I did the other experiment, B, testing. I said, "Oh, I run marketing for a small technology company." Nobody wants to talk to you in the party.
Yeah.
But that feeling still exists, that are you being taken advantage of? So one is very careful. If somebody comes to you and says, "Give me an hour time," I'll be happy to sort of agree to that idea. But if that person discusses something with you and then does nothing about it and then wants to come back again to you, then you may have second thoughts. But you also learn in the process. So it's a continuum. It's a journey.
I think through this exchange of conversation, you also build up your mechanism of figuring out if that person is serious or whiling away time in terms of having a good conversation. You build up that mechanism also.
Yeah. So you asked them, we did discuss this last time, if I remember it right. He says, yeah, I remember, but I did not do it like that because something happened, or
Yeah.
I didn't think it was worthwhile, which is fine. But if the person says something which is more nonchalant, then you will ask that question. So why again me? If you don't value my
Yeah.
input, did you consider it at least?
Yeah.
So
Punit, I'm going to ask you now the same set of questions, but for two different audience. My first question is, how can, let's say, a new MBA grad who is joining the corporate world in these times display or discover their creativity to the world they are in? And also, again, a corporate person who's been doing the same, I won't say hackneyed or banal job, but the same thing on a daily basis, how can they discover and display their creativity? So these are my two set of audience. And my third question is, a new entrepreneur, how can they discover and display their creativity on daily basis? The third question is with a selfish interest of mine, but the first two questions are because I see a lot of people, they have this basic question. We've just graduated out of an MBA school. We'll only do what we're asked to. Or I've been doing this same thing for the last 7 years. I'm comfortable. I don't want to take a new role. So what's your take on that?
Uh, I do believe that all three segments that you talked about, all of us have creative instincts. All of us have creative kida. Just that we, like for example, the MBAs are easier to answer. There's a certain MBA template. So when you join a B school program, there's a certain template.
Yeah.
ऐसे ही करना होगा,
G.
ऐसे ही live project चाहिए होगा. The
Yeah.
world has moved on. I'll give an example. The world has moved on. Even in 2020, FMCG and HUL are the most aspirational jobs for an MBA. I mean, come on. Really? So there is a bhed chal. There is a template. This jacket, straight jacketed approach. I've come to an MBA. Most people are not joining MBA to be creative, by the way. They're joining MBA कि एक वो अच्छा CTC मिल जाए job.
Yeah.
This campus says average CTC is 10 lakhs, तो हमें 10 लाख का तो मिल ही जाएगा 2 साल बाद. चलो 20 लाख डाल देते हैं. So we are carrying forward the rote learning. The problem is not the MBA. The problem is not our job, Ridhima. The problem starts from our schooling, where we are told, पढ़ो 200 क्वेश्चन पढ़ लो, एग्जाम में बैठ जाओ, आगे बढ़ गया. The first genuine test of somebody's abilities is the IIT-JEE exam, where you can only read so much questions, but you will be challenged. So MBA is just the symptom, not the root cause. I have seen a lot of MBAs who have worked for companies, have tried ventures, have come to an MBA program, and they're doing very well. So in MBA also, they're told in a certain way. So they follow by the rule book, by the rote learning. Challenge even I have with MBA students is that they will say, sir, वो अभी सेम्स हो रहे हैं मेरे, तो मैं ये assignment नहीं कर सकती, या आपका जो अभी हम बात करने वाले थे on this topic, I cannot attend. I can keep on telling them that this is MBA, this is a professional program, there is a business administration, this is not an MA. But there's only so much you can fight that battle. So for MBAs to be creative, they should first of all remove their MBA layer. Yoga called MBA. They should just think about their personal journey, personal life. So I'll give you an example. An MBA came to me saying, my campus has not been able to place me. This is last year. And I'm not sure where I'll end up. And I've spent 2 years of money in Bengaluru. My parents are from Andhra, farmers, and they've funded me. They're very poor people. They've taken a loan to fund me. And I'm not sure where should I go. Almost dejected in his life. So I asked him a few questions. I said, what did you do in your bachelor's? Oh, I did my engineering in some place in Andhra. I said, okay. What are your passions? He said, motorcycling. I said, what else? He says, football. I says, anything that you achieved? He says, yeah, I played for my state in football. So I said, so you're in Bangalore. You are a football player. Are you playing football locally? He said, yeah, I play football every weekend in Bangalore. So I said, so why not join sports management? And the connection, he was just not able to connect that in the real life, he can apply his MBA. His MBA thinking was getting into his way कि उसको technology में ही जाना है, bank में ही जाना है, FMCG में जाना है.
Yeah.
The fact that sports leagues in India are the biggest, hottest opportunity, especially football as well. And then the moment that connection happened, I asked him, do you want me to introduce you to some football clubs, FCs? He said, no, that I know. Now you've given me the key. So he ended up joining a football club in Goa after all his research. So this MBA, jhola, it's too heavy for us. So I would encourage MBA students to just get rid of that. Don't think you're an MBA. Just think you are a simple person with some thoughts and ideas. And they have plenty.
Yes.
Many MBAs I work with for internships, I have to, because, in a lecture, you can't do this, but when they work with you on an hourly basis every week, and I saw that you have hired your first 2 interns yesterday in the post. So you have to make them aware that whatever you're coming to here, I'm not hiring an MBA, I'm hiring two individuals, two human beings with
Yes.
brains. The moment you unprogram that part, they will fly. And I have 50% success rate with my interns, 138 over last 7 years, interns. But when they do well, they hit the ball out of the park every time. So that's the MBA part. Second is, in a job also, we're not looking for people who just follow orders. Look, if I'm a manager, I have team reporting to me. If I only do what I've been doing, there's no way I'm going to get promoted. There's no way I'm going to get more money. If all you know is what you did all this while, then you can't get growth. So we all want growth. So aspirationally, we all want growth, but the growth is in the uncomfortable zone, is outside the comfort. Uske liye hamare paas samay nahi. So most companies will now incentivize you not to break rules, but to come back with newer thoughts and newer ideas. So it's happening far more in knowledge industries in India. It's happening far more in media entertainment.
Yeah.
But now that bug is also catching on to traditional sectors like manufacturing. So I see that movement where managers are more aware. And I'll tell you why. Companies are not this. How are companies valued? Companies are valued for two aspects: tangible assets, machinery, tools, physical space, building, and intangible asset. And creativity is part of intangible asset.
Intangible one, yeah.
Correct. So intangible assets valuation, if you see research in America, if you see research in India, those companies get higher valuation.
Yes.
Than the companies which only have traditional assets. So entrepreneurs, CEOs of companies now are making creative thinking, ideation, brainstorming. These all formal processes. Design thinking is the latest buzzword in most of the companies. An entrepreneur, that's the most evolved species in this case. You don't need to train them. They already know there's an opportunity. They just want newer tools to be more aware, and how do you translate that into action on the street.
Puneet, when an entrepreneur from, let's say, a service background gets into the entrepreneurial realm of thinking, there are typically few challenges which are, mind blocks, which comes like, what if I'm not able to make a certain standard of salary which I was getting before? Or do I really need to hire people because I can do this myself? Or this is not going to give me money in the short term. So should I invest in the long term or try to make things on short term basis? So what would be your suggestion and advice to all these entrepreneurs? Maybe they come from service background, maybe they're not MBA background, but they're entrepreneurs and they've just started their careers. What would be your suggestion to them, that how can they, take a step back and not succumb to these temptations which may be crossing at the back of their head?
This is the usual journey for every entrepreneur. What is short term? What is long term? Kal company nahi rahegi to long term kya leke baithenge, right? So short term survival, what you're building for long term. I think the first and foremost is, please have good mentors around you, at least a handful who can advise you for different aspects of your journey. Because those, you have the answers, you also have the questions, but you need somebody else to weigh them for you and show you the mirror. So having sounding board and some mentors, they may not have equity in your company. They may not have the typical skin in the game for you, but that's also very good because they're doing something for you from the value they see in front of them. So those are valid questions. What is short term? But every compromise you make today is a compromise for the future also. So if you give out, for example, equity at cheap because you can't afford to pay the guy, so you give him equity. Later on, that will become a challenge for you when the company gets valued.
Yeah.
So the way I have addressed that equation is, I have looked at long term, but I've executed at transactional level. But I know that this is not the trade-off I'll make. I'll give you an example. So at Octane, we were building permission-based email marketing platform, which meant that only if you have email ID with permission of the customer, should you be able to send them emails. Now, everybody said to us, that's not how India works. Email address ka list lo aur chipkao aur blast kar do. So the temptations were very severe. We had companies which came to us and said, you have 240 million email IDs of Indian users. 240 million. We have the largest database of opt-in. Not our own. It's the brands who are using our platform. But hey, how will the brand know agar humne usme aur kisi ka mail shot dal diya, right? So those are things you don't do. There's some things, some lines you never cross.
Yes.
Everything else, you take it as it comes on a daily basis. And I must tell you, the problem that I've seen, especially in my journey also, a lot of the cultural issues, values, you cannot reinforce later. What uh, my good friend and mentor Jairam Iswaran says, what are your war stories in your company? Those war stories are seeded when you're 1+1+1+1. So how Ridhima takes decisions today, and
Hmm.
those people around her watching her, is the way the war story for Nyra will be. And that you can't, that DNA you can't change later. कि हाँ हम बहुत कुछ कर लिया, अब हम बदल जाएंगे. That
Hmm.
doesn't happen. So those are things you got to be very careful about. Values culture is where you should be long term. Transactional stuff you can execute at a lower base. But most important is please have people who are happy to help you, even at a short notice to call. And that support network you need, because entrepreneurs are lonely people in many ways.
I echo that. Uh, Puneet, my last question. When, let's say, as a corporate employee, you move up the ladder, you see your aspirations getting fulfilled, getting that hefty check. As an entrepreneur, again, you have a certain way how your office is going to look like, how many CR of business you're going to put in. Now, once you achieve that scale, what should be your approach of utilizing that money? Because, I have seen a lot of times when people say, oh, ab to achieve kar liya. Now I'm like chilling or doing the same thing. And they become, I think, creatively bankrupt at that point, which I find amusing. I mean, your aspirations are getting fulfilled and you're like, what next? I'm happy in what I'm doing. So, what would be your suggestion to those people once your aspirations get met and you get that material things? What should be your approach?
Uh, so satisfaction will lead to more dissatisfaction.
I see. Okay.
If you see, we have just witnessed the most tragic news perhaps around us, which is the Zappos
Yes,
CEO.
to me, yeah.
And whether he committed whatever he committed, self-harm, or but he was not happy. Here is a person who's sharing happiness with everybody,
Yeah.
who's written books on happiness, and he was not happy. So, and when I go through something similar, I have achieved, but I'm not happy. Everybody says you should be happy. I'm not happy. Everybody celebrates my success. I'm like, big deal.
Hmm.
So then you ask that question, why is it? And mind is a fabulous stuff. Mind has a mind of its own. So mind starts playing
I
games.
like that.
Nothing has changed around you physically, but mind will start creating games to make you unhappy. Happiness, unhappiness, content, dissatisfied, these are all mind games. So learning how to control the mind before the mind controls you is an integral part of anybody's journey. Corporate, student, homemaker, doesn't matter. And I feel there's a lot of input. Who am I to tell you? But there's a lot of input you can receive from our traditions. So, for example, if you look at what Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, right? 3 things to do in life, right? Do you know those 3 things? You want to talk about them yourself?
Please, please, please. I had like readied my pen and paper for me to jot it
Kirat
down.
karo, which is do the act every day. Please get up and do some work every day, right?
Hmm.
Naam japo, do meditation, give time to yourself, reflect. And third, he says is something about sharing with others. Um, One chakko, something like that. So that's the part. So 3 things. And so if you put those three, those are the three legs of a stool, sitting stool. So if you have 3 legs, the stool becomes stable. And if you have success, which is only on 2 of those 3 leg stools, then you're going to be unstable inside of you. A
Hmm.
lot of us are driven by log kya kahenge and that kind of stuff. I think
Yeah.
success is when you yourself are content in where you are. You could be content with 5 Mercedes Benz. You could be content with just a cycle. So there's a reason why Mukesh Bhai Ambani works so hard even now. It's
Yeah.
not another zero in his number. And that's the question I often ask, that why do these people work? Unke paas hi pura paisa hai. So the challenge is that if you get that financial success at the end of your longer career, you can manage that success much easier. When you get that earlier in your cycle, a lot of the other tools you do not have in place to manage that growth. And that's why we'll see a lot of bad things happen to good people around us.
So, Puneet, quickly for the benefit of our audience, I think certain nuggets of gold that you spoke in the last 20 minutes were that you give time to yourself to solidify your thoughts, and I think that is important aspect. You read a whole lot of volume of books which we see behind you, and doing a lot of pro bono conversations. And you said that I still have a selfish interest, but that's a long term selfish interest. It's not like the short term transactions that you look forward to. And you said all the goodness you do, it comes back to you in truckloads. And I really like this expression that you used, that once you get success, satisfaction has a way of rendering more dissatisfaction, and a mind has its mind of its own to render that dissatisfaction to you. So if you get success early on, it's important to have those tools in place. And another interesting aspect that you touched upon is that companies get valued on two assets in today's time, the tangible one and the intangible ones. And the biggest part of that intangible one is the creativity of its human capital, which is why there is an interest of all of us to build our creativity. So I think I learned a lot personally, Puneet, from this conversation. Any last, not last, but any beginning message that you'd like to give to our viewers before we wrap up today's conversation?
All disclaimers apply. Nothing I've said to you is my original thought. It's all smorgasbord. It's all a mix-up of cut, copy, paste. So all disclaimers apply. If you get something value out of it, fabulous. But if something doesn't go your way, you know who to catch. You can catch me on LinkedIn. Get hold of me. Tell me that you've read this or you've seen this podcast or listened to this podcast, and hold me responsible. And I'll try to see if I can help you in some form or the other. So with that, let me just say thank you for the opportunity, Ridhima. This is a great series, and I think you should do something more than just podcasts around it. Happy to discuss ideas offline.
That'd be really nice. And Puneet, like I always say that in my journey of being entrepreneur, a lot of people say you can't be entrepreneur like this because you're always nice to people. You can't say no to people. You can't hold negotiation. But I always say that people learn along the journey. And what I see in you is your genuine intention and authenticity to add value to people. I think if that's one trait I can develop in myself in the long term, I would be happy, not satisfied, but happy for sure. So thank you so much for setting such a lovely example and for always making time for all my experiments and what you say, thought initiative. Thank you so much for making time for this
Perfect.
conversation. I had a
Thank you.
great
You
time.
have a
Thank
nice day. Thank you.
you. Bye bye.